Hello, and welcome to Crafting with You, where I bring you a wide range of crafting tutorials and ideas. In today's tutorial, I'm going to show you another stitch you can use with loop yarn. If you're not familiar with loop yarn, I highly suggest you go and take a look at my scarf video because that gives you a real breakdown of how to use this yarn and then progress into this blanket. This stitch is called the seed stitch, but it also looks like a basket weave, right? In any case, it makes a very nice looking blanket, so if you want to learn this stitch, follow along with me. Let's get started. Let's start with some info. This will be your seed stitch pattern, and as you can see, there are only 9 loops across, not indicative of the pattern or how many loops you're supposed to have. I just did this so you can see the repeat. You will also see some arrows on the right. This represents the direction you will be knitting. There are 2 different color loops. The white one I'm calling a back knit, where you knit from the back to the front, and the blue one is I'm calling a front knit, where you knit from the front to the back. Pretty simple, right? I didn't want to limit you on dimensions, so I'm giving you a stitch gauge. For my yarn, 5 loops across, or the width, and 5 rows height will give you a 4" by 4" square. Now you can use that and do a little bit of math and figure out how many loops across and how many rows high you need to go to achieve the dimensions you want. A little disclaimer, depending on the brand of your loop yarn and the color you purchase, the thickness is always a little bit different. So my advice is to do 5 loops across and then knit those at 5 rows high and see how that compares to the 4" gauge. Using that measurement, then you can figure out how wide and tall you can have your blanket be. For the width, you're always going to want to have an odd number of stitches. So for example, 61 or 63 loops across. This ensures that you begin and end the row on the same back knit. If you decide you want to increase the width of your blanket, always make sure that you're doing it multiples of 2 to keep that odd number. Here's a pattern by itself, so if you'd like to take a screenshot or pause at this point in the video when you're doing your project, please feel free. So let's start knitting. I'm going to skip the first 2 loops, and these are my weave-in yarns, and I'm starting with that 3rd loop, and I put a stitch marker on there just so that I know that was my first stitch. I'm doing 13 loops across just so that it's easier to see on the screen, and I put another stitch marker there at the end. Now we're going to start knitting in that left direction, and with this we always go opposite each row of the knitting direction. We're going to go left. So here is the first loop on the foundation row, and this is the first loop on my working yarn. We're going to go from a back knit to the front, because it was a white loop on the pattern, so just pull through the back, go through the front, and pull up. For this next one, we're going to, let's move the yarn over here so it's easier to work with. So here is my second loop on my foundation row. We're going to move the working yarn to the front of the loop. You see how we're moving here to the front? We're going to take that loop on the working yarn, going from the front to the back. And that's what I mean when I say a front knit. Front, the back, and then pull up. Okay, now we're going to move on to the 3rd loop on our foundation row. Take that working yarn, move it to the back of the loop again. So that's the 3rd one here. Pick that up, take the loop on our working yarn, knit from the back through the front, and pull up. It's kind of the same thing after this. We're going to move the working yarn to the front. We're going to grab the loop that we're working on our foundation row, right? This one. Take the loop from the working yarn, thread it from the front through the back, pull up. So just repeat this motion for the rest of the loops in the row. I am now here at my last loop on my foundation row. I'm going to do a back knit, so take the loop from my working yarn, thread it through, and pull up. At this point, your first row is now done. After every row, I like to pull up on all the loops just to ensure that they're knitted in there securely. And now let's move on to the second row. For row 2, we'll be knitting in the right direction. So grab the first loop that you're going to knit, which is this one. Take the first loop from your working yarn, which is right here, and then we're going to go from the front to the back. So you see how we did that back knit on that last row there? We're going to be doing a front knit. So take the working yarn, bring it to the front, take that loop on the working yarn, go from the front, knit through the back, and pull up. On this next one, we're going to again take the working yarn, change it to the back, take the loop from the working yarn and do a back knit. Knit from the back to the front and pull up. For the next loop, we're going to make the working yarn come to the front, take the loop, thread it through the front, and pull up. Because we just did a front knit, now we'll be doing a back knit. So go from the back to the front, pull up. As you can see, we're doing the exact opposite of what we did in this first row. So if you get a little confused, a good way to tell is if you look at that knit you're doing, that is a back knit. So automatically for this loop, you're going to be doing a front knit. And you see how there's that line or yarn right there? That is a front knit. So on this one, you're going to be doing a back knit. So always do the opposite. This pattern is that, just a series of opposites. So now knit the rest of your loops until you get to the end of the row. I am now here at the last loop on my row. So as you can see, I'm going to be doing a front knit because I just completed a back knit. When you're done with the row, as I said before, just pull up on all the loops just to make sure that they're knitted very securely. With 2 rows knitted, now you can really start to see the pattern form. Just keep repeating rows 1 and 2 until you reach the height of the blanket that you like. I knitted a few more rows just so you can see what the pattern looks like on a bigger scale. And as a tip, after every couple of rows, you're going to want to flip it to the back side just to make sure you didn't miss any loops because it's actually very obvious if you missed any, it'll stick right out. So just undo the blanket to that point and then knit and be on your way. One thing I really love about this stitch is that the front and the back of the blanket look exactly the same. So both sides of the blanket, either way you lay it, is going to look very nice. Once you are done with your blanket, I'm going to show you really quickly how to bind off the top. So you're going to go where your working yarn is, go on the opposite side, and that's where you're going to start. Take those first 2 loops, thread that second loop through the first, and pull up. Again, take that second loop, thread the first, pull up, take the second loop, thread it through the first, pull up, and you're going to keep repeating this until you get to the very last loop there. And that's how easy it is to finish off your blanket. When you're done binding off, hold on to that last loop. You're going to count out 2 loops and cut it right at this point. And then you're going to go in and snip that little piece of yarn in between those loops. And when you do that, it becomes one long, continuous piece of yarn. Take that yarn, thread it through that loop, and pull out and then weave in. If you would like to add a border to your blanket, I have a separate tutorial that shows you how to do that. I will link the video in the description box, and I'll also give you the time or the point in the video where those instructions start so you can skip right to that point. Here is my completed blanket. It is actually a lap size blanket because I'm giving it as a Christmas gift to a senior that I know. I'm still deciding if I want to add some kind of design element to this. So if I figure out something cute, I'll make it into a video so you can have a look at it. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. I have several other loop yarn videos on my channel, so please give that a look when you have some time. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on Crafting with You.